We are currently recording on the brand new DJI Osmo Action. This is supposed to be the camera that finally dethrones GoPro as the preeminent action / vlogging camera. Is it actually any good? Let's find out.
What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. I love action cameras, and it is a great day when a company finally releases something that can challenge GoPro. Now don't get me wrong, I like GoPro, and I've mentioned this before, but there isn't anyone out there in the last 2 or 3 years that are really spending any money to R&D new exciting action cameras besides GoPro. Sure, you've got some clones out there that repackage old generation technology every few months or so, but arguably, since the Hero 6 came out, no one else is innovating in this marketplace. So just for that purpose alone, I'm happy that DJI entered the marketplace. Competition drives innovation, hopefully. Now that we've got our hands on this potentially market upsetting device, let's break it down and compare it to the 5 things that an action camera has to do, or darn it, it's a weird little fisheye distorting camera, might as well be on a cell phone. Cause that's what you use these days. And these 5 things are called the pillars of action! Action! Man, I really just do not get to yell that enough anymore. First up, image quality. The Osmo Action is rocking a 1/2.3 inch CMOS sensor with a 12 megapixel camera and a 145 degree field of view with an f2.8 lens. It can record up to 4K 60 frames per second and can do slow motion in 1080p up to 240 frames per second. For different color science, it can also record in DJI's Cinelike D format that will make a slightly flatter image if you really want to grade your action camera footage. Hey, some people do. There are crazy people everywhere. Something that I like so much more in the Osmo Action as opposed to the Osmo Pocket is this truly acts like an action camera where there is infinity focus as opposed to having a depth of field. Because to this day, that's still the thing that frustrates me the most about the Osmo Pocket. There's only so much autofocusing capabilities you can pack into such a small camera. I like having just everything be in focus. And this is one of the reasons why I think we haven't seen a 1-inch censored action camera yet, is the bigger the sensor, the shallower the depth of field. And for something like a camera that's used to record literally everything around you while you're biking or skiing or swimming or something else exciting, you don't want to have to limit yourself by having part of the image out of focus. I mean, there's only so much cinematic you want like your image quality to be when you're trying to capture everything. And speaking of the image quality, yeah, it's pretty darn good. I mean, that's not really that shocking of a statement to make, right? I mean, this does have the same imaging system as the Osmo Pocket, so I hold this camera to a higher standard than somebody else's first attempt, and it works perfectly well. I mean, DJI has a history of making pretty darn good small censored cameras, and they keep that tradition well and alive right here. But there's always gotta be a but. What's legitimately impressed the crap out of me with the Osmo Action is its low light indoor recording capabilities. Normally when you have a cell phone, an action camera, even low-end camcorders, they generally look like garbage inside unless they have a pretty wide open aperture, or you can sit next to a window and gather in lots of natural light. But we already said this has an f2.8, and I think the Osmo Action looks phenomenal indoors. I mean, obviously maybe not as good as my higher end cameras here, but in a pinch, this is totally usable. That's totally shocking. We saw that in the unboxing, that it works perfectly fine indoors. My biggest complaint when it comes to image quality is, unlike GoPro, there are no standard viewing angles. On the GoPro Hero 7 Black, you can choose super view, wide, and linear. Here, you don't get those options. You basically are stuck to wide unless you turn off that fisheye distortion, then you get like a quasi super view. So you only really get 2 options instead of the 3 like on a GoPro. The next pillar on this trip of ease of use, because I've been out on the trail and the last thing on this planet I want to do is to have my camera cause me to stop and mess around with it. Well, thankfully the Osmo Action has a huge touchscreen, and that happens to be my favorite method for action camera configuration changes. But it's not enough that the camera has a touchscreen, the user interface has to be pretty on point as well. And the Osmo Action has a perfectly easy to use, intuitive interface. Swipe right to bring up the auto or manual controls, swipe up to bring up the frame rate and stabilization, down for the overall camera settings, and left to bring up your recorded media. We don't have any in here right now, but if I had an SD card in here, you'd swipe left to see what you've already shot. It's quick, it's easy, and that's about the highest praise I can give to a camera interface. There is a problem here that doesn't really fit anywhere else, but since we're talking about screens, a real problem I've noticed is when you've got Rocksteady on and you are recording at the same time, there is a pretty substantial delay between what is reality and what the screen is showing. So if you wave your hand around, there's about a second delay before you'll see that happen on the display itself. That's not that big of a deal for people using this as a straight up action camera, since you won't ever be looking at the screen. But if you're using this to vlog, or you spend a lot of time framing up shots behind the camera, this could cause some problems. And I just assume that there's not enough processing power to really manage Rocksteady, 4K 60, and the screen all at the same time. The next pillar is compatibility with GoPro style mounts and accessories. Even if this ends up being better than the GoPro Hero line of cameras, the Action world is still built to house that iconically shaped camera. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Osmo Action is shaped exactly like a GoPro. And I mean exactly. Plus, while its included sticky mount is of a different design, the case itself still utilizes the standard 2-prong that is compatible with all currently available GoPro mounts. And that's both good and bad. Good that it is able to fall into an existing system, bad in that they are really just straight up copying a lot of what's been done before. Next up, stabilization. Here's the big one. Next to the front-facing screen, the big selling point of the Osmo Action is the new Rocksteady electronic image stabilization system. Much like GoPro, the way this works is it crops in on the image a little bit and uses an algorithm to determine where you're gonna go to stabilize the footage. And yeah, it works pretty darn well. I personally think that the future of all camera stabilization is electronic. As camera sensors overall get bigger and camera bodies get smaller, there is less physical room to have optical image stabilization. But as processors and algorithms get better, this is absolutely the future of stabilization. When you're hand holding it or using it to vlog or run, it's phenomenal. Now, I haven't had the chance to put this head to head against the GoPro Hero 7 Black and its hyper smooth yet, but just from using the Osmo Action, it's pretty darn good, if not better. There is a weakness that I've seen so far just in my quick initial test, is if you sling it into a chest harness with no gimbal, there is a bit of a wobble when riding a mountain bike on even a light trail. So you might need a gimbal, or you need to hardwire this to like the bike itself. You need to hard clamp it to the bike itself. You can't just use it in a chest harness like I would. Not normally an action camera thing, but as this is a quasi vlogging camera, let's hop outside real quick and put the stabilization to the test with a video / vlogging test.
Welcome to the vlogging test of the DJI Osmo Action. We are now wandering around making some videos about this camera, which will it supplant the GoPro Hero 7 Black as like the best action camera? We'll have to figure that out. I'm not necessarily sure yet on whether I will replace my GoPro entirely with this camera. We're gonna have to take it out mountain biking and doing some more like rugged, rough stuff with it. But initial impressions, first like few days I've had it, I'm really impressed with the camera. I like the front screen more than I thought I would. I think the stabilization's pretty darn good. The audio is also pretty good. The image quality is actually pretty good too. Now, if you saw my unboxing video, we did some indoor tests with the Osmo Action, and the indoor image quality of the Osmo Action is strikingly good. Like, I cannot believe how good the image quality inside is with this camera. Like, legitimately impressed. It's a lot like the Osmo Pocket. I do believe it has the exact same sensor, the exact same imaging system as the Osmo Pocket. So it should be just as good as the Osmo Pocket, stuff like indoors. Like, I've been using the Osmo Pocket at every convention this year. I use it at both CES and NAB, and I get perfectly good image quality indoors. So I would have no problem using the Osmo Action indoors also. Okay. Woo! Oh, there's bugs everywhere. Now I'm noticing there's bugs everywhere. Okay, back to the video.
But the most important, centrally defining aspect of an action camera is absolutely durability. An action camera cannot be an action camera if it's not durable. I mean, the whole reason to get one of these cameras, instead of just using your phone for the same thing, is you can use these in situations where you are fearful that it would, you know, break your phone. This is where the Osmo Action actually presents the biggest threat to GoPro. Stabilization's everywhere, everybody has a gimbal, all of that. GoPro for years, and I mean since the Hero 5 Black in 2016, has had the only good action camera capable of being waterproof without a separate waterproof housing case. There have been cheaper knockoffs, but they're not nearly as good. GoPro, they held the absolute pinnacle for durability for so long, and if you go back and watch all of my other action camera videos, you'll see that this is the one thing that nobody else could touch about GoPro. Oops. Well, not anymore. They no longer hold this particular hill because the Osmo Action is waterproof down to 11 meters, and as we saw during the vlogging test, it even did pretty well with audio with that waterproof housing, which took GoPro until the Hero 7 Black to really get right. Not only is it waterproof, but this thing is built like a tank. It feels very rugged, has already survived several drops of mine because I'm clumsy, and gives me zero pause to be concerned about its construction if I were to take it out on the trail or throw it in my bag for anything. But at the end of the day, should you buy the Osmo Action? If you already have a Hero 7 Black, there isn't really much here to entice me away from it, though we will make a more in-depth comparison video about both of them later, unless you absolutely have to have that front-facing screen, which isn't that useful for an action camera if we're being honest. There's very rare cases where you'll actually look at the camera when you're using it in an action scenario. But it is admittedly a pretty cool feature if you are only intending to use this for vlogging or doing online video much like this. But if you are looking for your first action camera, then I would give this a look. It's got a great looking image, the stabilization is awesome, the front screen isn't perfect, and the display isn't perfect when using the stabilization, but it's usable. I think it's overall a pretty good attempt from DJI. We'll have to see where they go from here. This is a very good first attempt. Thanks for watching.